This is the Instant Speed Podcast brought to you by FABDB.net, your premier source for deck building tools, collection management, and simulated booster drafting. Upgrade your account at FABDB.net. Get access to all the features to bring your game to the next level. Yes, it is time for episode 13 of the Instant Speed Podcast with your guest to be Tommy Fresh of the Fresh and Buds podcast. But before we get to that, we've got the facts for you. The ban list has been updated with exactly, well, nothing. Nothing has been banned or added to it. Basically, what LSS says is that there are some events that have essentially been postponed due to COVID-related issues, and frankly, if we do swap up some cards and change things, it's gonna warp the meta a little bit, and it ain't fair to those who had it done already. Not to mention, I don't know if there's anything that's really worth banning. We're gonna talk about that on the podcast, but that is what the story is right now. No bans. How about the updated Living Legends tally? Yes, the points that these heroes accumulate when they win tournaments, how they perform, which leads to potential banning. Well, the new tally is a Chain on top at 442. Briar, with Briar's very short span out there in the field, 400 Living Legends points to Briar's name already. Katsu in third place at 294. The reveal season for the Everfest set that is set to launch, I believe, in February 4th. The reveal season will span from January 24th through the 30th. So tune in to your favorite Flesh and Blood content creators, outlets, social media, whatever you like, including this podcast. Yes, the Instant Speed Podcast will have a reveal for you on the January 26th episode of the show. We're going to reveal a fresh new card for you that I cannot tell you about just yet. But tune into the show on January 26th and you will see what that card is. All right. Proquest. Everybody wants to know about Proquest. Proquest tickets are slowly sprouting up in various different areas, so make sure you go to fabtcg.com and check it out. Also, fabtcg.com/ I think it's PQ, if I'm not mistaken, where you get all the information about what Proquest is. But if you want to find it, use the events locator, search up using the field of Proquest, and see what's available around your area. Tickets for this are going to go very fast, so you need to have your finger on the button for these ones, friends. Again, Proquest tickets starting to pop up. And we have a awesome guest for you for this episode. It is Tommy Fresh of the Fresh and Bud podcast, joining the Instant Speed Podcast right now. The Instant Speed Podcast is so happy to welcome a fresh and very kind voice of the Flesh and Blood community. He is the host of the Fresh and Buds podcast, a true friend of the community. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Tommy Fresh to the podcast. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Flake. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it is sincerely my pleasure. I know I did your podcast a few weeks ago. I had an excellent time. I know that we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we powered through them. So I'm kind of hoping that is it for like the rest of the year for both of us in terms of technical difficulties and issues. This one's going to go smooth sailing. And I do appreciate the fact that yeah, they better. Seriously, we earned it. Damn it! Like, we're hardworking people. But I sincerely do appreciate you doing the show, because honestly, you are somebody who has you have a plethora of episodes of your podcast, the Fresh and Buds podcast, which I do listen to and I do enjoy greatly. You're also somebody who just seems so damn chilled out and nice and cool. Listening to your podcast, it's not like there's not a whole lot of bells and whistles to it. There's not a lot of gimmicks. It's just somebody with a very soothing and calm and engaging voice talking about cards and opening fresh packs. And it is so damn good. But what we want to get to, like we always do, is the origin story of Tommy Fresh, including, I'm assuming your last name is not Fresh, and I'm not asking you to sort of divulge your identity, but
it is actually not Fresh. I will say that it is definitely not Fresh. But my last name's Hendricks. I mean, it's just, I think Fresh is just a little bit cooler. Maybe, I don't know.
Hendricks is pretty damn cool on its own. Yeah. I mean, be it the guitarist or the gin, both of those are pretty damn cool. But
enjoy both.
The fact remains is that now that we've done some significant down to earth, real, nose to the grindstone journalism and got to the bottom of what your name actually is, we can probably get back to just sticking around and talking about cards. But the origin story of Tommy Fresh is what we want to get to, because hearing about the roots of somebody, a personality within the community, and how they got to where they are right now, for you being the host of a very awesome podcast for Flesh and Blood. And I want to know what led you up to that point. Where are you now, and how did you get to be Tommy Fresh of Fresh and Buds?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words about my show, and obviously it was awesome having you on and braving all those wonderful technical difficulties, which are great. And I know you said that I seem like this really chill guy. Trust me, all the anxiety's there. You just don't hear it on the podcast and stuff like that. But I think that's kind of my favorite thing about the podcast. I can kind of put forth that chill vibe when I it's hard to do it in the real life, which is nice. So the origin story, well, I guess in a town called Middletown, New Jersey, my mom and dad met. No, I probably and we'll start with like card games. I think circa 2009 was maybe like a junior in high school. My friends were starting to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh a little bit, and I played a little bit with them, and I was like, I don't really love this game, and I remember playing a little bit of Magic in like middle school. I was like, oh, let's see what's up with Magic these days, and it turned out to have like a pretty bustling community at the time, and I was like, oh, what's the best way to kind of play? And I found out that F&M was a thing, Friday Night Magic, and I looked on their website to see where the closest one was to me. We had two options. One was in Trenton, which was a little bit further and also not a great neighborhood, and then the other one was in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So we went to the store called Cyborg One, and we just started jamming cards there. It was an awesome experience, and that's kind of when I really started to really fall in love with card games in general, and even like some of the more like advanced board games. And we would jam F&Ms. It was fun. We showed up at our first F&M, and the store owner, the LGS owner, kind of looked through our cards like, well, that's not legal and standard. That's not legal and standard. So that was when we got our first lesson on what a rotation is,
yes,
which was fun.
Not only that, but also a lesson in how Wizards makes a shazbutt load of money.
Yeah. It is one of those things. You try. I mean, for a couple of years there, we tried to strategically trade out our collection as the new sets are coming in to try to keep ahead of the curve, but it never panned out. We always spent a lot more money than we really needed to, especially as broke college kids. But that's kind of where that started, and I think that was such a good time. It was for me anyway. It was like pre like net decking and stuff like that, and it was like you would just show up to F&M with a deck that was really cool and something you'd been thinking about all week at like during class or whatever, when you definitely shouldn't have been doing it, but you do it anyway. And so that was that, and then kind of life moves on, and some of my friends stopped playing because college got so busy. They moved away, got girlfriends, wives, whatever it may be. I kept playing. I think I always, really loved Magic in a way, in terms of it keeping me mentally engaged. So I always kept playing. Eventually, like most people right now, it switched over to online clients like Arena over the years, and then I think Flesh and Blood really came into the picture for, I think, a lot of people when that announcement of organized play came, which I think was July they announced it. And I was like, well, I had always really enjoyed going to like GPs and 5Ks and like the different SCG events for Magic, and I kind of missed it. So I was like, oh, let me check out what this Flesh and Blood thing is. And I believe I watched one of LSV's videos on it from Channel Fireball, and I was watching, and I was like, okay, I think I could maybe get down with this, and went to an LGS, picked up some Monarch precons, and started jamming with my cousin, and we were like, oh, this game's pretty sweet. And he didn't really have the time to play, but I was like, I really like this game. I'm gonna start playing. I found an LGS that had armories on like Mondays, which is like great. So I'll give it a shout out. It's Highlander Games in Boonton, New Jersey. Really cool guys over there.
I love that. By the way, a lot of people that come on the show here typically just shout out their local game stores, the ones that they're kind of tied to, and I love that because it's such an integral part to not just card games in general, but especially to Flesh and Blood, when you can't necessarily play it online so easily and streamlined as every other card game seems to be. So yeah, big ups to LGS. So which one was that again? You said Highlander Games?
Highlander Games in Boonton, New Jersey. Cool guys. Owner Rob's an awesome dude. He's a good dude to chat with, and he's pretty chill too. He's kind of definitely is a vibe that I enjoy. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Flesh and Blood's very rooted in that LGS community and playing, together and in the Flesh and Blood, obviously. But but we were also very fortunate to be able to rock webcam games and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I started going to that LGS, and then one of my buddies that played Magic, he randomly bought some Crucible War packs, without even, he didn't know I played at the time. He cracked a Arknight Shard on his first pack, which, if you don't know, is a fabled card. It's very rare.
Of course, it's always someone who doesn't care or doesn't, isn't so intimately involved in the game, because I've never opened a fabled in my life. I've opened probably about 9 or 10 boxes, maybe even more, probably closer to 12 to 15 boxes in my lifetime, just on my own, not to mention the countless amount of drafts and sealed tournaments that I've been in. And then never in my life have I ever even been within the vicinity of anybody who has opened a fabled. It's just not been a thing. I've held one in my hand. A Kano player played one, and I was just like, this is amazing. I've seen the great library of Solana within my vicinity, but I've never been there for the great reveal of an actual fabled card. And it's just damn it. Like, just send some our way, man. Like, just give us a little bit of that karma.
Well, it's almost like LSS knows, like, we got to make sure these fables go to the players that need that little nudge into the game, not to the
this
guys
is easy.
like us who are going to play anyway.
Yeah. It's like the player that just, like their first ever game of Halo, and they just start off with like sticking a guy from across the map for a double kill. Like, oh, this game is freaking easy. And then, it's all pain and downhill from there. But yeah, I get it. It's a nice little hook, especially when you just pull a Fabled when your first pack. Sure, why not?
Yeah, definitely. So he like messaged me on Discord, and he was like, hey, like, what's the deal with this thing? Like, I'm like, oh my God, dude. Yeah, all right, let's hop on a Discord call. I'm going to tell you all about this game. You got obviously some great luck. So, let's just ride this out. And now he plays all the time. We play on webcam all the time. He lives in Philadelphia, so we're not super close. So we get to play on webcam all the time. And I guess right before that is when I started the podcast, or at least the first or second episode I had probably done. I love podcasting. I like talking. I love listening to podcasts. For my day job, I'm driving around a lot, so I'm just jamming podcasts all day, from comedy podcasts to one of my favorite Magic ones was always Limited Resources with Marshall Sutcliffe and LSV, and I was like, well, I think I want to talk about Flesh and Blood, and I think that's a great outlet for me to do it. And I decided, well, if I am going to do it, I want to do it right. I want to kind of come up with my own, I guess, brand of podcast. The name was just, essentially started out, I was like, well, what rhymes with Flesh and Blood? And then I was like, well, fresh and buds is kind of like whatever. And I know a lot of people do think, and they do ask me, oh, was that, are you alluding to some certain, extracurricular activities? I'm not
related. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm not, but whatever. If people want to think that, I don't care. Obviously do what you got to do. But I was like, well, Fresh could be my kind of persona, Tommy Fresh, and it's just like who I am. But and Buds is everybody, it's like my listeners, if I ever got them at the time, I didn't know, and people I would have on. Like, I think that's important for a podcast to kind of build a sense of community, and I think that for my podcast that the buds are the most important part. They're equally as important to me. If they're not there, what's the point of me being there? So, and vice versa. So, that's just kind of where I started at the podcast, and I started out by just talking to myself. And at first, it was kind of a challenge to myself. Let's say, hey, let's see if I can talk for an hour, to myself about one thing, and I could, and it's not always the the cleanest, and it's not always the smoothest, but
it's natural, and
it's natural.
Yeah,
it likes to kind of take its own form. That's kind of where
what I found about your podcast particularly is the fact that it does come off as genuine, that it's not necessarily a shtick, or it's not something that you're trying to force. You're not playing a persona. Tommy Fresh is just like, it's a name that you've chosen, but it's not like you're going in there, playing a character necessarily. Like, what you see is what you get, which is what I try to present myself as, and it's always a challenge. And when you're talking about the difficulties of actually just kind of quote unquote talking to yourself, this is something I know all too well. I mean, I'm a streamer and a podcast. I'm a broadcaster by profession, and streaming was something that got me noticed for contract work, for casting and such. But you're right, it's an awkward thing when you're basically just speaking to essentially nobody. But if there's one thing I can say is that your podcast is something that it just feels very natural, and it feels like you're there. One of the homey feels of the entire thing. Like, I feel like when I listen to your podcast, let's say when I'm doing the dishes, or when I'm going for a walk, or I'm doing the laundry or whatever, and it feels like you're just kind of whispering in my ear. I don't want to say whispering because that sounds creepy, but it's just, you're just there, like you're there with me, and I don't necessarily need to answer your questions, but it's nice to hear you go through a pack of cards again. On your podcast, I mentioned about one of the best feelings of the sounds is that crinkling of the wrapper paper, and like, it's some subtle little things like that. And we're going to plug your stuff fully at the end of the show, but again, for those who want more Flesh and Blood content, wait till the end of this episode, but then go check out Fresh and Buds, because Fresh and Buds is damn good. And I mean, the Buds part, I mean, I'm in Canada, it's legal here, so we can talk about it. I'm not at risk of anything, but one of the,
it's technically legal here some places
in
here.
New Jersey, I'm not sure what the actual thing is. And what's funny about that is the fact that this is completely tangential to what we're supposed to be talking about. But when they were legislating the fact that marijuana was going to become legal in Canada, and it was going to be legal on Canada Day of I forgot what year it was, like 2015 or something like that. And everyone around here, like with a more conservative kind of outlook on things, were very aggressively pushing the narrative that life on Earth, as we know it, was going to end, and that nobody was going to be a functional human being because marijuana was going to take over the world. And on July 1st of whatever year that it was legalized, everyone went out and smoked a joint, and it was one of those days of like, it's a holiday anyway, so no one's working, so it's not a big deal. But then, like, the next day, it was back to work as normal, and nobody, it's like, like some people will have a beer after work. Some people will sit on the couch and smoke a joint after work, or have an edible after work. And it's like, nothing has changed. It's a whole other discussion to have, but it's just, it's just silly how that kind of goes on there. Okay. Tangent done. Political stance.
To each their own is what I always say. And, if you partake or don't, I don't care. So
beauty. That's how it should be. As long as you're not hurting anyone, no one's hurting anyone. No. But one of the unique parts about your podcast is not just the flavor or the feel that you get, like that kind of comfortable feel that you get listening to your podcast, but you've also sort of started with a cube drafting and such. Like, you've kind of started working on that as a concept. And as someone who has never cube drafted and knows nothing about it, I'm sure that for people who are in Flesh and Blood and enjoy the content, they might not know what cube drafting is, let alone how it pertains or how it goes with or how it plugs into Flesh and Blood. Can you just like walk us through what a cube draft is in general, and then how you've kind of developed this and where you're at with the Fresh and Buds cube drafting extravaganza?
Yeah, so cube is a thing that I guess really started in Magic. It's kind of where you create your own draft experience that you can do with your friends. There's multiple different ways to do it. Basically, you kind of just have a set list of cards that you You will, make it. I think it's 360 is enough for 8 players to have 3 packs worth, which is 15 cards each. You shuffle it all up. You create these little 15 card packs, and you pass them out like you're doing a regular draft, and then you draft it and then play each other. Uh, and I guess the design of the cube is also something you have to keep in mind. So, if you're familiar with Magic, some people have power cubes, where it's just all powerful cards, and some people have, pauper cubes, where it's just all commons and uncommons, like really cheap. And then you create these, I guess, these synergies within, like, these different kinds of decks you can draft. A lot like you would a normal booster draft. Like a set has a certain set amount of synergies or decks you can draft. And for example, in Flesh and Blood, I've been drafting a lot of Tales of Aria. There's 3 heroes you can draft, and I guess there's different kinds of variations of those heroes that you can draft based on the different elemental sides of things you go into. So I really have enjoyed the Flesh and Blood draft. I always was a big limited player, still am in any game. I think drafting Flesh and Blood might be slowly becoming one of my favorite things in the game. It's a really clean draft experience, and you would think I would have gotten tired of Tales of Aria at this point, but I haven't, and I'm always down to do another draft. Maybe it's because I really enjoy forcing Oldham and being annoying at the table, but these Briar players have it coming. I can't help it.
Part of it might be just like you're improving at the actual draft experience as well, because I think I'm on the same boat as you, where at first I was like, I'm just so tired of drafting this. It's just basically a fight for Bramble Sparks and whoever can find, those red lightning cards to really push damage. But ultimately, I found that the more I drafted, the better I became at it, and I enjoyed the experience of not just drafting and playing my deck, but also improving and honing my abilities to read the room and know what's passed to you and what that means. When it's pick 3 and you've found a really good, let's say, Oldham or Ice card that would typically go early, and then you're finally figuring out, you're like, wow, okay, so nobody on my right is drafting this kind of stuff, so I'm that kind of experience also has enhanced it for me. Do you feel like you're getting better at draft in general?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that was one of the best things about it is the difference between my first draft and my last draft is so. And this is true for Flesh and Blood in general. I think once you get it, you start to improve pretty rapidly to the point of feeling like you can be competitive yourself. I remember my first draft. I didn't know what I was doing. I kind of like was basing my picks based off of just, I guess, heuristics that I knew from Magic Draft, and then kind of went from there. And I built a feasible deck, but it just wasn't good. But the next draft, I was like, okay, well, I learned what wasn't good last time, and what I need to do this time, and then I was like doing side drafts in Orlando after I scrubbed out, and I was like going 2-1, 3-0 every single time. And the difference really maybe solidified me in really loving drafting Flesh and Blood. But it made me think, oh well, how do we bring this to a cube in Flesh and Blood? And basically my design for my cube is I just like a normal set. A la like Welcome to Wraith or Arcane Rising has 4 heroes that you can draft from. So I was like, well, I wanna support 4 heroes, and the 4 heroes I went were Viserai and Azalea from Arcane Rising, and Rhinar and Dorinthia from Welcome to Wraith. So you can draft from a pool of warrior cards, brute cards, runeblade cards, and ranger cards, as well as a plethora of generics. It's still very in the early stages. Got listeners from my Discord want to test it on tabletop and stuff like that. We're going to figure it all out. But the concept is I have enough cards for each hero to support 2 strong decks for each hero, or maybe 3 weaker ones at the table. So in theory, it should work. I've tested a little bit by myself, just kind of messing around with the packs and whatnot. There will be tweaks as more cards come out into the pool. It's obviously a limited card pool right now, but I'm excited to play more of it. Hopefully, when we get some callings announced next year, hopefully, some of the guests of the Fresh and Bloods podcast, we all get together and do a cube draft. That would be awesome. I know Louis from Kitchen Table has also made a cube. His is a little bit of a different theory of his, but I won't speak to his because I don't really know what's going on with his. I just know mine, and maybe I don't even really know what's going on with mine. But I did talk about it last week on the podcast, and if you check it out, you'll see like there's a Google Doc with the list and kind of somewhat of an explanation of it as well.
And it's something that you can customize and just kind of change and go through. I mean, the cube that you're working on now with those 4 particular heroes, it's just, I mean, you hear them now, like, okay, Dorinthia, Azalea, Viserai, and the 4th was Rhinar.
Rhinar.
Yeah. Which are, I mean, Rhinar kind of has sort of wheeled its way into somewhat a little bit of relevance, and Dorinthia is typically is much better in Blitz than she is in CC, and I mean, Azalea is kind of the forgotten child of the Ranger and Realm, and then you have Viserai, which is kind of a little bit of a gimmicky style, like you can OTK, you can do some nasty stuff with it, but I like the nice mix here, because some of it is just these like these forgotten children of Flesh and Blood herodom that you're bringing back into relevance and putting all the necessary cards in there. And the concept of cube, which again I knew very little about from a Magic perspective. I knew that it was kind of like it was a draft format where all the cards are essentially predetermined, and every facet of it that I've ever heard was like it's just a pool of massive bombs, and you have like these ridiculous games. But I'm wondering how you kind of, resolve the issue of you have to draft cards that are pertaining to your particular hero. So at a certain point, doesn't that kind of limit the drafting potential of the cube, wherein, like in any draft, in any, even in Tales of Aria, eventually you're just pulling cards that are relevant to your particular hero? Does that, in your testing of the cube, have you been able to ward off that inevitability of just drafting what is playable instead of what is good, so to speak, like whatever is actually a card that you can fit into your deck? Or have you just kind of, maybe put in more generics that make it a richer pool for more choice for longer periods of time?
So one thing I wanted to do in this cube is to include a certain amount of scarcity. It's a singleton of every card that I put in there. Obviously it will have the red, yellow, and blue of a card, but it won't have multiples of those. So I think the general rule in Flesh and Blood drafting in any way is to keep yourself open in the beginning, take some general or generic cards that will fit into kind of any kind of deck, and then maybe you take a really strong of one card and keep open and make sure you keep yourself in a position where you can switch into warrior or ranger or whatever. But in Flesh and Blood in general, I think by the end of your first pack, you kind of have to know which hero you're going to really try to draft. Now, I do include cracked baubles in my cube, so that if anybody ends up getting short, hopefully it'll be all holiday cracked baubles. That would be really sweet. But that is the idea there. I mean, there are fail safes for players who don't really get there. And it might, as it stands now, kind of really challenge the drafters to read the signals and to make sure that they're drafting with experience, I guess, which, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a beginner's experience. I would say it's like, I would want to play with all Flesh and Blood, like people who draft a lot already. But I think that's the same for any cube, because cube in general can be very daunting for new players. So that's where I'm at now. I mean, we're gonna test it out a little bit and really refine it, but it's exciting. I think it's a cool thing, and I think the more ways to play Flesh and Blood, the better. And I hope it catches on, so people make their own cubes and stuff like that. There's plenty of heroes to throw in there, and yeah.
I like that. I definitely like it. We have so much to talk about, and part of it is, I mean, I want to get to the fact that the new ban announcements were announced very recently. I believe it was on the 14th. Yesterday, today. It was yesterday. So today, technically for us, for you and I, it is the 14th of December. So it was technically released today, but in New Zealand time. So it was like yesterday for us. So it was odd because it was announced for the 14th and we got it on the 13th, which was the 14th. I don't know. Space and time was bent just for us, just so we get it first. But there was nothing that was banned. And a lot of that was also the fact that certain events got delayed, which changes the meta as well. So I like the announcement in that regard because there are certain major events that had to be delayed. So there's no use in banning stuff to warp a meta for people who have been preparing for an event that didn't take place to that point. But at the same time, is there anything worth banning that you feel like? I don't think that there's anything that is egregiously, shifting the meta one way or another to a degree that it needs an immediate answer to it or an immediate, it needs to be addressed right away. But at the same time, without a ban, is there something that's glaringly missing? Is there something that it was just overlooked that needed to be, just kind of cut out of the meta right away?
Personally, I don't think we really needed a ban, and I think that's the general consensus among the deck builders of the world out there. I think everybody believes Briar is beatable.
Well, she is. I mean,
Yeah.
like the thing about Briar is, yes, she took the world by storm because of the fact that it was just it was brand new to the scene, and it basically dumpstered the entire field until people caught up to it. And what I like to talk when I talk about the Briar list, there was Matthew Folks, who went undefeated at Nats UK. There was Tarek Patel, who took the deck in Orlando and won. But the thing about it is that the first instance of this deck was at the UK Nationals, and it dumpstered the field, absolutely dummied the field. Then people caught on to it, got the list, tried it out. But the problem with the list was that people started to add a little bit of their own personality to it, and which kind of robs it of a little bit of its flair, because it's like taking a Corvette and adding like these gigantic bat wings to it. It's like, okay, I get it. Like you're adding your own personal flavor and flair to it, but you're robbing it of what makes it so beautiful and amazing on its own. So I think that I don't mean to hijack the thing here, but when you mentioned that people are realizing that Briar is beatable, of course she's beatable because she has lost several times to a variety of different heroes. Is she strong? Absolutely, she's strong. But is she beatable? Of course. And I think that once something is hot and new, like Briar was, and people realize that I have all these cards, I can just build this right now. There's nothing that I'm really missing out of this. There's nothing out of the ordinary. I can build this. They built it, they played it, and there was this massive sort of pendulum swing to the Briar side. And then there was a correction, and the correction was natural. The thing is there wasn't that many major events post Orlando for people to start realizing and testing their mettle in terms of how beatable Briar was. Because immediately after Orlando, Lexi won Canadian Nationals, Kano won was it Italian Nationals,
Yep.
Chain won, was it Hong Kong Nationals, I think? Like there was a significant amount of other events that Briar did not come through on.
Yeah, and I mean, so here's the thing. Like Briar is, there's a lot of things wrong with Briar, in my opinion. In terms of the design, right? And it is what it is. I don't think this being a paper game, we should really have erratas unless it's just a small wording thing. And I don't think that should happen to Briar. I know people had talked about that. I don't think there's anything really in the deck that could really like affect how good the Briar is, that a ban would really be effective. And we've seen that she's beautiful. I think that she will still win. She got 400 points in the Living Legend status already in the few short months that she's been out, as we saw with the announcement. That's 40% of Living Legend status. And at that rate, by next December, if Briar continues to win, we're going to see her get Living Legend status. She'll be the first Living Legend hero. And It is worth noting that we, was it New Zealand and Australia were postponed? Were there any others?
I
Or
don't have them offhand, but there were a few. I think there's Utrecht. I think I'm probably pronouncing that terribly, but I apologize. But there were a few events that were essentially just kind of put on the shelf for a bit.
yeah, and I truly don't think it would be fair to really just switch up the whole meta on those players. Because those players were watching the other nationals. They were watching, the calling Orlando. They were taking a look at, what this meta is going to shape out to be. If you kind of sweep the rug out from under their feet, that's not that great. I don't think that's a good look. I know that sometimes the Twitter timeline gets a little crazy, and people get, it's like, oh, this needs to go, blah 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 blah. I think the decision not to ban anything was a good decision. We have another ban update right after Everfest comes out, and I don't think we really have a ton of events before then. Maybe that's when the other nationals that were postponed will have taken place. But Everfest is gonna give us cards for every hero. We already know that, so I think it's fine to wait until then, and even after. I actually think it's a pretty healthy meta right now. We have Briar. We have the cards or the heroes that really, give it to Briar, like Oldham and Ice Lexi, and then even Kano, obviously that what we saw with Pietro in Italy, that can totally just take over a Briar dominated field. So and then the other heroes can are good against the Oldham and Lexis and the Kanos. So I think it's a weird rock paper scissors situation right now, and I think that's actually a good thing. And I think we're probably gonna see a healthy meta going forward, in my opinion. I mean, I've been wrong before, and I will be again, I'm sure.
No one's ever wrong, ever, about anything, especially about card games. No one has ever said an incorrect thing about card games, ever. I like what you're going with that, and I think that you're right. I think the meta is just fine. The problem is that it takes major events typically to just sort of get a new snapshot of what the meta is. So everybody has this lingering taste in their mouth of what they've seen most recently, but be it at their local game store or at the major tournaments and the announcements thereof, like of here's what won this nationals and that nationals, and the graphics that are essentially produced thereafter that give these metrics that associated to what has happened. And it's very tough to look at those metrics and not be swayed one way or another to say like, oh, it's good or it's bad, because you look at it and you're like, oh, the top 8 was 6 Briars. It's like, okay, you're right, there were 6 Briars, but there was also only 2 Briars in the top 4, so a lot of the Briars lost and a lot of the other stuff went forward, and ultimately Briar didn't really win. There was a Briar in the finals, sure, but it was beaten by a Kano or a Chain or a Katsu or whatever. So I think it just takes competitive seasons for people to start getting motivated to get back to the drawing board, because there is no ladder system, right? There is no magic ladder. There is no legend. There is no pro rank. There is no mythic rank or something like that, depending on what card game that you're interested from the digital formats. So
I think that's actually a great thing about Flesh and Blood, because those card games that you just mentioned, the meta gets figured out in 2 days. That's not fun. I don't think that's fun.
No, it's not.
Like, give us some time. We just got these cards. Let's mess around with them. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm like some kind of boomer over here, but that's just how I feel.
And there's also like the fun part about it is the fact that you kind of get these like whispers and rumors going around, like this top secret deck constructions and testing that occurs in like these pockets of the world where it's like, I'm hearing rumblings that somebody broke this hero or somebody broke that hero. And how much of that is just, some kind of like egotistical circle jerk of people just trying to hype up their own stuff. But at the same time, some of it's true, because the Tariq Patel Briar list was something that was worked on privately and then kind of leaked out. And it just busted everything wide open. And I'm really happy that Tarek won the Nats, because he was essentially the architect of the list and the concept of the list. And wrapping up the segment of the podcast here, I just want to touch really quickly about Proquest. And Proquest is, like you're saying, that there's not a lot of these events that are in the short term. We just wrapped up skirmish season. The national season is either wrapped up or on hold for certain areas. But ultimately, Proquest is the next thing that people are really digging into hard, as I have basically figured out. I had to get to buy tickets to the the Proquest events. I needed to have and tap into certain connections of people saying, I'm like, listen, like, just tell me when it's on, like, send me a DM, because I'm so oblivious to this stuff. But those tickets get snapped up immediately. And not only that, amidst the people that I speak to about with the game, like within my sort of little circle of close friends that I talk to the game, they are planning out like these road tours of, okay, we're going here, then we're going here, then we're going here, then we're going here. It's like, dear Christ, like that is I love to hear that. It's just such a good thing. It's like following fish on tour. Like, it's just like, it's crazy to that regard, right? I'm just wondering on your end, what your not just aspirations for what Proquest can turn into, but do you have any competitive ambitions yourself? And where do you plug into the competitive scene?
I feel like that I can't help but want to be competitive, but it's almost a double-edged sword for me, because I want to be, I enjoy being competitive. I enjoy partaking in competitive events, but I also, for some reason, there's something in me. I don't know if it's my Irish guilt or something like that, but I play the not competitive decks. Like, I'm a Levia main. I just like play decks that hurt me, and I don't know what it is, but I can't help it. But the ProQuest season is actually really exciting, and it is really cool that people are planning out like multiple different ProQuests. Oh, we'll hit one on Saturday, one on Sunday. That'd be awesome. It reminds me of when I first started playing Magic. I mean, there was we did a PTQ in Philadelphia, and then one up in Schenectady, New York, or however you pronounce it. And it was a Saturday and then a Sunday, and that was like fun. It was like fun to just kind of go out with your friends and hit multiple of these events. So it's pretty exciting. I've already seen that quite a few of the LGSs in Jersey will be running them. There's plenty in Pennsylvania, which is not that far. I got a friend in Maryland that there's a ton there. So I'm gonna plan on hitting at least 2 or 3 of them in that month or so that they're gonna be happening. I will see where I fall in terms of what kind of deck I bring. I mean, I would like to perform well. I like to be competitive, but I can't help but want to be that guy who like brought something that nobody expected. So we'll see. I mean, yes, to answer your question, I do have competitive ambitions. We will see if I make any right decisions when it comes to that. So it remains to be seen.
Well, there's a little bit of cautious optimism in there, like when you're talking about it, obviously, because you want to go in with what you know, and if it's Levia, then it's Levia. Like, I went, the first RTNs I played was with Katsu because it was the only cards that A, I knew, and B, I had any reps with. Ultimately, competition is just, it's not for me. I still crave it, but it's not something that I aspire to, or the people that are just kind of jamming 10 hours a day of practice ahead of a major event. That's something that I can't do. I mean, at a certain point, I'm like, I could, but I'm like, there's like a new episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm that just came out. Like, there's a King of Queens marathon on like TV right now, and Kevin James is my jam. Like, I gotta watch that. Like, there's things I gotta do. Like, I'm a busy man. I can't just watch all the '90s sitcoms on, prepare for a tournament. I can't do all of that. I get the Seinfeld to watch for the 900th time. So to me, a ProQuest is something that I can't wait to dive into. But I think that I, like you, am going for the experience and not necessarily the result.
Exactly. And it's. I don't want to practice to the point where I am losing the joy in the game. I haven't gotten to that point yet, even when I jam games. Flesh and Blood, as it stands now, is something that I can't get enough of, and I would like to keep it that way. So I will practice for these events, but I just don't want to lose the joy. I really love this game, and I don't want intense competition to be the reason I don't love it anymore. So, and I am binging through Seinfeld currently as well. So we obviously have great taste.
Your first run through, or like a 19th rewatch, like I would?
My first full run through, I'd always watched it, but never like, now it's on Netflix. It's just so much easier to just kind of sit down and watch like all through all 9 seasons. And it's been great. I do it while I work out though. So like, I'm not really I'm like on the bike and like I'm laughing and losing my breath and probably getting really lightheaded, but it is what it is.
Oh man, when you just mentioned that you watch it on while you're working out, I just picture I don't know if you've gotten to this episode yet, but the one with the Mandelbaums, like the one with the "you think you're better than me," like the three men, like they're all like one's the son of the other and the son of the other, like the 3 generations of Mandelbaums, and one of them is like a trainer and tries to get Jerry back into shape, and he goes to the gym and it's all this like old 1960s equipment, and Jerry asks, he's like, "Is this a gym or a fitness museum?" And he's like, "All aboard the pain train." And then he starts just like like a 90-year-old man starts punching Jerry while he's holding a medicine ball. And Jerry's just like, "What the hell is this?" All right. Well,
show ever. Right?
It's up there for me. My 2 favorite all-time comedy shows ever are Seinfeld and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, to me, those have one hell of a spot in my heart.
Oh yeah. We have a similar affinity there, Flake.
You and I, man. Like one day, like, so when we do finally get these callings rolling again, and we're all traveling to the same one because we're awesome like that. It's just that's what's gonna happen. It's gonna be an all-day affair of drafting, playing, having a good time, and then we're just gonna chill in the hotel, order pizza, and watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I think that's probably the best possible weekend I could hope for.
Yeah, I'm there, man. We're gonna do it. I know it.
All right.
2022 is gonna be awesome.
I dig it. Well, you're going to be there, but are you going to be around for Go Again around the corner?
I sure am.
Awesome, man. Well, we will be right back with Tommy Fresh just after these quick words from FABDB.net, your number one resource for Flesh and Blood deck building, tools, and awesomeness. Okay, we get it. National season's over. It's the holidays. So what are you going to do for your Flesh and Blood, your intake, your upkeep of your Flesh and Blood collection? Maybe you're getting some cards for Christmas. Maybe the holidays are coming in, someone got you a gift and you got to go ahead and update your collection. You got some new cards. You want to be able to sort of add them to the collection list, but you also want to go ahead and theory craft with them, especially ahead of the fact that there's going to be some farewell to Welcome to Wrath tournaments coming up. You want to get your decks up and running. Go to fabdb.net. Upgrade your account to premium. What do you get there? Well, you get some really cool collection tools, manage your collection, theory craft, deck build, get statistics and metrics on the deck that you're building, as well as getting some simulated booster drafts and some booster generators. Get it all at fabdb.net. Upgrade your account to premium, friends. You will not regret it. All right, it's time to go wide on Tommy Fresh, as we have a nice little segment that I like to call Go Again, because I stole it from LSS and all their keywords. It could have been called like action or defense reaction or attack reaction, but I think Go Again is probably the most suitable. Either way, it's a series of rapid-fired questions, Tommy Fresh. And by rapid fire, I mean I'll ask them quickly, but you could probably take your time answering them. I know that sounds kind of lightning roundish, but that's not at all what this is. So
yeah, it goes.
If you're ready to go, I'm ready to go.
I am ready, man. Hit me with it.
All right. With my first action, I will ask you, Mr. Tommy Fresh. Now, part of your wonderful podcast, the Fresh and Buds podcast, is that you have a Crack-a-Pack segment where essentially you just open a pack and go through the cards and talk about, not just the cards themselves, but like the artwork and, the significance. And it's just a nice little nostalgic feeling, and it's a very wholesome thing. But if ever you were given the opportunity of having a pack of Alpha Wraith in your hand, would you crack it on your stream in Crack a Pack?
I mean, I'll put it this way. I would not buy a pack of Alpha Wraith, but if I were to get one in my possession, I would crack it. And what I do with all my Crack Packs, I give away the rares and foils and majestics, and no legendaries yet on the podcast yet, but it's coming. But if I were to come across a Alpha pack, I would certainly crack it and definitely put everything in the giveaway. That would be a lot of fun.
Okay. Hey, and you know what? We all become much more, rich and wholesome because of your generosity. So there you have it. So if anyone's out there listening to this and has a spare pack of Alpha Wraith, send one to Tommy Fresh. And if you have two, send one to me as well. Thank you so much. What is your most cherished Flesh and Blood moment or achievement?
Jeez, this is a tough one. I mean, I guess it's going to be related to the podcast because it's very much the lifeblood of me playing Flesh and Blood, and I kind of relate them together. A listener of mine, his name's Caleb, had told me, it was a small compliment, but really meant a lot, and it really made me realize that I'm really accomplishing what I really set out to do. He told me, he's like, hey, I love your podcast because it feels like I'm just hanging with my friends, and I think that is a awesome thing to say. And I was very appreciative of it, and I hope that everybody feels that way. But it made me, it affirmed me that what I was doing was what I wanted to do, and the first couple episodes you just don't know. You're putting yourself out there, and you don't know what kind of reaction you're going to get. But that was like, okay, I love this game, and I think it shows. So yeah.
It's always nice to get those kinds of words of affirmation, but even when they for what might seem to be insignificant for someone to say, it usually holds a lot of weight for us as content creators when someone can just say something to them that might just be an offhand comment that they might otherwise not even say, but it means so much for us. Where someone like Caleb mentioned, it just feels like I'm hanging out with my friends. It seems so throwaway and nonchalant, but again, it holds so much value for us and affirmation for what we do and something like that. So cheers to you, Caleb, again. And again, thanks for listening to our content and to Tommy's content, because that's what it does feel like. It does feel like you're just kind of hanging out with your friends. It feels like you have company, and that's what's a great thing. And I have been told early on in my journey that I should probably just pack it up and move on. And it's those kinds of words you have to just chew on and digest and just move along from, or just let them just deflect off you. But the ones that, the little ones that hold so much weight in your pocket, like the ones that are just like, hey, I think that, I really appreciate your podcast, or it's good, or it's this, or it's that. Like, it goes a long way. So, it's nice to commiserate about this kind of stuff, because I'm sure that you and I have both been through these struggles of, things. It's tough to start out in podcasting, like you mentioned, where you're just quote unquote talking to nobody. And then all of a sudden you have that first mention, or that first retweet, or that first kind word that's sent your way. And it means so much, so much. And absolutely, for us that are within that sphere of content creation, we are all trying to, and I mentioned this last week, that Flesh and Blood has a very special community where all the content creators, for the most part, is one that I've ever bumped up against or rubbed elbows with, is they're always, it's like, all right, now you're part of the crew. We're all in this together. We're all rowing the same way. So it's been a very inclusive environment. But hearing it from the other side, hearing it from the spectator side, the viewership side, the listener side, means a lot. So if you're listening to this, ladies and gentlemen, go hug your most dearest content creater. It means so much.
Hug your phone.
I mean, don't hug your phone. That's weird. Yeah.
But I do agree. I mean, in terms of all the other content creators in Flesh and Blood, they're all amazing. everyone I've talked to. It's been incredible, and I'm glad to call a lot of them friends, and you included, Matt. It is a awesome experience. I don't feel any sort of competition. I feel only us building each other up, and I think that's really important. And I think that breeds a great community of players and listeners and content. I guess um, listeners or viewers. A good community there too. So
Damn right.
yeah,
The community is essentially the foundation. We just build our pillars on top of it. So it's good to be sturdy.
yeah.
All right, no more mushy stuff because we got some business to get to. And the business is every single one of the flesh and blood heroes are out to get you. You're allowed to choose 2 to protect you. Which 2 do you choose to give yourself the best chance at surviving?
This is a great question. This is tough because my instinct is to pick some brutes because I like to play them, but I actually don't think that would. They're too risky. You're rolling too many dice. Whatever. I would love Sir Bolton on my side for sure. I mean, you gotta look at him. He's just like he would give up his whole life for you. It's like it's obvious. He's that kind of guy. And then, I mean, so you got your close combat guy with Sir Bolton. You got to have. I would give Azalea the nod for the other one. I mean, you got to get a little combination of close combat and range. So and whatever. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But with the Rune Blades, they can stick it. And I'm gonna go with Bolton and Azalea, I think.
I mean, Prism to me seems like an obvious choice to a degree. Illusionists, the spectral shielding and stuff like that. I figured the other one is just whoever. I think Sir Bolton and Azalea are a really good combo, though. I don't know if I'd want to hang around Alexi. That's just frosting and lightning. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. I feel like the elemental kind of turbulence might cause some trouble there. But that's not a bad duo.
I don't disagree with you on the Prism part, but I just hate playing against that deck, so I just can't really give her the nod for anything. So a runner up would probably be Oldham, but I think getting Bolton out there in front would be pretty.
I legitimately was thinking about the worst pick, and to me, Bolton was the option because, frankly, if there was like a flight of stairs, you could see the pain in his eyes. It's like, oh, I got to go up these stairs now. Oh my God. Carrying his giant shield and his old, withered, broken down body. Like, stairs would be his greatest foe, frankly. And gravity is a constant bane on his existence. All right, what is Tommy Fresh's secret talent, his hidden talent?
Oh, geez. Other than my alcohol tolerance,
that's like a superhero power, though. I wouldn't know. I don't call that that's like a mutant ability, right?
Yeah, it's something else, man. I gotta tell you. But I play acoustic guitar. I rock out on the drums and that's probably it. I mean, I love to cook too. I'm a avid cook when I have the time, and yeah, I mean, and I am a super taster, right? So I'm in the beer business for my daytime job.
Okay.
And so I can taste certain, I guess, off flavors in beer pretty strongly. So something that your normal beer drinker won't even notice. I notice I can't even finish the beer. There's, I mean, the biggest one that everybody talks about is a chemical called diacetyl, and its flavor is like that fake butter popcorn or the fake butter you put on your popcorn in the movie theater.
Right.
And if a bar has a dirty lime, it will grow that bacteria, and you will taste it, and it will be absolutely disgusting. For me, it'd be I can't even finish the beer. But some people don't even taste it. And some beers actually traditionally have a little bit in it, like the Czech style pilsners from Czechoslovakia and stuff like that. So that is a hidden talent, I guess.
So you're like a beer sommelier.
Yeah, they're called Cicerones. I never took the test because it's like $75 and my employer didn't care, so I never went for it. Yeah.
Well, that is a pretty good one as well. I also like the fact that I think the past three guests on the podcast, yourself, Garbage Andy, and Red Zone Rogue, all have musical abilities, and I still am dead set on forming a Flesh and Blood band, and I am all for being lead singer in that mother effer because I cannot play an instrument. I could kind of strum a guitar, like 4 or 5 different chords, and like if given the task, I will learn something. But ultimately, I'm so down to create a band. And if okay, well, here's a good question for you, a follow up. What would be the name of the band that you would form?
That I would form. Well, I had a band in high school. I would play drums for called 5 O'clock Shadow because my one buddy he's been growing a beard since like I don't know, like 4th grade. So we were just like, oh, we'll call him 5 O'clock Shadow. I don't know what I would call it. You know what? I think a new band because. So here's the thing. It's funny you mentioned Red Zone and Andy, both heavy metal influences. I'm more on the folky bluegrass side of things, and so. I don't know if I can really keep up with them. They're pretty wild and talented. It's been watching Andy's videos on Twitter lately. He's an immaculate guitarist. But a band name that I would do or have now, I think it would be called.
So Red Zone has Phasmatis.
Phasmatis, yes.
Our Andy has Threat Display. There's 5 O'clock Shadow, but that's old school for you.
That's old school. That's that we broke up. I don't talk now. I still talk to those guys, but I think those are like very metal names, and I'm going to go with this very folky names. Just be Ghost Winter. I think that's.
I like it. That's an
chill.
Oldham theme right there.
So yeah, Ghost Winter.
That's a pretty decent one. I have to again rely or lean on the band name that I mistakenly fell into, which was Cold Foil Clownhammer. Is still the name of.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love that name.
Cold Foil Clownhammer coming at you, opening for Ghost Winter. Part of the same card. That's on Saturday. On Sunday, you get Phasmatis and Threat Display. But on exactly. We're the day before. All right. What card would you be happy to see completely just eradicated from Flesh and Blood?
Oh man, Prism. I think.
In general, like I was thinking something like Command and Conquer. You're going for a full hero.
I think Command and Conquer is an interesting one, right? I don't think Command and Conquer is inherently broken. I just think it's so playable that it's annoying, right? You can just play it in anything.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think that's. I mean, I like that we have that in the game, right? It's something to kind of refer to. Maybe I'm joking with Prism, but I think any of the auras in Prism. I'm not a fan of that deck. I don't like playing against it. It's just like I just want to attack you. Stop throwing these things at you and like making me attack those instead. I don't like that. So I would say any one of Prism's auras, and Prism players. I'm sorry. You can message me on Twitter, and I'll just tell you that
you're wrong.
I'm sorry that you play the worst, the worst hero. No. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, that's not bad. Again, Tyler Horspool is probably going to just write you a strongly worded, bold font letter telling you why you're wrong, but that's okay.
No, I would have him on the podcast so we just debate it, and he'd probably win because obviously
it's like, and you're going to be there just like, and what makes you think that you know about Prism? He's like, I won the the first calling with Prism in a sea of chain nonsense. So yeah, I think he's got it spot on. Next question, second to last question is, who inspires you?
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, there's a couple ways to answer this. I think everybody I've met through Flesh and Blood in the content community is very, very inspiring. I think the fact that everybody's so cool and we all seem to kind of get it and put out stuff and we're not competitive or anything. I think I get an inspiration from all of you guys. I think that's awesome. But I think my greatest podcast inspiration is Marshall Sutcliffe, who hosts the Limited Resources podcast, and he's a great caster, and he's just a super intelligent, and he's got that buttery voice. It's just perfect. I mean, it's like who's got a better voice than him? It's like so amazing, and he's really got a knack for it. He's got the gift of the gab, as it were. And he's always inspired me. I've listened to them for years and years and years. And even though I don't play a lot of Magic anymore, I still always like to listen because it's good podcast, good radio. It is. And yeah, that's my inspiration, I guess. Yeah.
All right, Flesh and Blood right now is kind of in a little bit of a hibernation, so to speak, ramping up for 2022, which has essentially been slated to be fairly significant. Lots of callings, lots of money on the line. But that's next year. Where's Flesh and Blood looking, or what's it looking like in 5 years?
Good question. So it's funny. It feels like for Flesh and Blood, every major kind of pinnacle of the past, like everything seems to be, this is the make or break for Flesh and Blood, right? Like Vegas was the make or break. The slew of callings after was the make or break, and I think we've learned that Flesh and Blood is here to stay at this point. I wouldn't say 2022's make or break, but I think 2022 is slated to be a historic year for Flesh and Blood, and I hope that means that the 4 years following grow it to the level that it has the potential to be. We will see how these Pro Tours go, the Proquest. I think it's going to be very exciting. I think this Proquest season is going to be a great way to start out the year competitively, and it definitely hinges. The next 5 years hinge on the competitive success. However, I do think we need keep in mind the casual player as well. It's very important, and we will see what kind of support that the casual players get. And I do believe that LSS recognizes that. I imagine we're going to see some product support in the next couple years for the casual multiplayer. I played my first round of Ultimate Pit Fight last night. It is fun. I don't know if it has the potential to be what Commander is in Magic, but who knows? I mean, if LSS really gets behind it, we could see a lot of success for Flesh and Blood in 5 years, 10 years, and even more. I'd love to see, obviously the game that I've grown to love grow. So, yeah, that's where I see Flesh and Blood. In 5 years.
Sounds healthy indeed. Again, like you mentioned, next year might be quite pivotal. The make or break stuff, I think, is kind of in the past to that degree, because it seems like Vegas was a home run. Every one of the callings after that was, well executed and great. The Nationals were a fairly big deal to a degree. I mean, the competitive nature of what the game is but also the accessibility and the appeal to casual players as well is both there. But I think that the importance of a game, the way that it can thrive and survive, has to be on the back of its competitive scene, and it looks like that's what they're ramping up for. So I think you're right about that. I think 2022 is going to be a crucial year for the longevity of the game. But if they line up the dominoes like they did in the previous year, amidst just this cacophony of roadblocks and obstacles, and still manage to get it done, I think that's a good thing. There's a few things I think that they need to clean up, but still, for now, it looks good, man. And speaking of looking good, you're looking fresh, brother, and I do appreciate you being on the show big time.
Well, thank you for having me, man. Obviously, I'm a fan of your show, and you've been on mine, and I'm glad to have gotten the opportunity to come on here and talk whatever nonsense I had. It's one of those things I record and kind of like black out everything. afterwards. So maybe I'll have to watch this whole episode to remember what I said. I'm sure. But it was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome, friends. Again, please go check out Tommy Fresh on all of his wonderful outlets of consumables. That would be on Twitter, on his podcast, etc. So tell us, Tommy Fresh, where can we get the Fresh and Buds podcast, and where can we get more of you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter, Fresh Buds Pod. I post some nonsense on there, and I always post when the show's out. I have a YouTube that I post the audio on there. I don't do a lot of video. I do them for set reviews, which I've only done one of so far. But we got Everfest coming, which is very exciting. And congrats on the preview card, by the way, Matt. And
that was going to be a little bit of a nugget I was going to drop. You know what? We'll add it to the start, the news portion of the show. Sorry. No. There's nothing wrong with that. I was contemplating whether I wanted to sort of add it to this show or just do add it to the next, but we'll throw it in there for sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I got a YouTube. It's just, you can search Fresh and Buds on there. And then the podcast is found on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and it's on Anchor.fm, which I believe you guys use as well.
Yeah, that's what we're on.
So which kind of links everything anyway. You can listen to it on the web browser, or you can link to whatever platform you use. And we talk about all kinds of stuff. Check it out. I get guests. Sometimes I'm just talking to myself. I usually end the show with some kind of bold food opinion. So if you want to fight me about food, I know I talked about my top 5 cheeses last week, and I got some blowback on that one. So I'm excited for the future of that for sure.
All right, so let's go with 4. 4 toppings on a pizza. What are they?
4. Oh, geez. Well, I gotta go pepperoni. Pepperoni, mushroom, onion, and ricotta cheese, like little dollops on there. I think would be nice.
It's not bad. Change the ricotta for banana peppers, and I'm sold, my friend. That sounds delicious.
All right. That sounds really good too.
I dig it. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show, Mr. Tommy Fresh.
All right. See you, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to the Instant Speed Podcast, brought to you by FABDB.net. Go to FABDB.net. Upgrade your account to premium. Get access to all the cool tools. Like we said, callings are around the corner. Next year is going to be big for competition, so you want to make sure that you got that FABDB account upgraded. Friends, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning, so keep playing the game. You might win. We'll catch you next week on the Instant Speed Podcast.